Hey, my name is Brian. I'm a software engineering manager, a self-taught coder, and I've seen all of your side projects, and they fall into like one of three different categories: the To-Do app, the clone of some other popular app, and Weather Finder, to-do list. The list goes not very far on and on. In fact, it's limited to just a few apps that I see over and over and over. So if you want to build something that's actually going to teach you a lot, maybe you can even spin it into your own startup. Maybe you're just going to use it to teach yourself some information that your boot camp skipped, or maybe you want to self-teach yourself. This is a great way to do it. I'm going to break down my formula, my way of doing a great side project. In fact, I've used this same pattern to, one, start startups, two, switch tech stacks and get higher pay, and three, just learn things that I would never learn on the job. So here's typically how I start. Maybe you have an idea, maybe you don't. So if you don't have an idea, the place where you want to start is at the API level. Why do you want to start at the API level? Because the problem without having data from an external source is that you're just really limited to like the stuff that you can think of. Like then you really are limited to things like to-do apps or a clone of something else or just something that's kind of been used a bunch of times before. You don't want to do that. You want to think of something interesting. So if you're really like spinning around, you don't know where to start, here, I'm in a place called Public APIs. You can honestly just type in free APIs. I'm doing this in real time as an example of how I might do this if I was really like thinking of how I'm going to learn something. I'm going to go down here. I'm going to check out some things. Football leagues and I don't watch sports. Just a heads up. I don't care about sports or watch them at all. No hate if you do, but I don't. So anyway, maybe I want to learn about football. I don't know. One thing I'm going to look here is auth. If it requires auth, I may skip it because I don't typically want to deal with that. If it's HTTPS, I definitely want to have that be true, because if it's not with an S at the end, it's not secure. It means I'll probably run into some issues if I want to deploy this. CORS means cross-origin resource sharing. I also want this to be yes, because if it is not, it means I'm going to basically not be able to use this API in my app. So that's going to be a big no-no. So let's go to one that fits all these criteria. So we have no, yes, and no. We have no, yes, yes. Sure. So let's go to ball, done, tile, whatever that means. Sure. Already a winner. Let's run this in Postman, and I have some information about it here, which is cool. And, okay, let's go back to what's going on here. Get all players. Okay, cool. So this is actually pretty interesting. So we get all players, and I am actually going to run this in Postman. So I'm going to go in Postman real quick, make sure this actually works. Boom. And take out the quotes, of course, because that's silly. What was I thinking? Bingo! We got some information. Now, once I have this data, now I'm going to think, what kind of app can I build around this data? Again, I'm not a sports guy, so forgive me if I say some silly stuff here. We have the name of the player, we have the team the player's on, we have their weight. Okay, so that's, something decent. So this could be a fairly simple app, like where maybe we grab all this data. Let's go back and see if there's anything else that's interesting we can get here. We have players. Oh, you can get a specific player. You can get teams. You can get teams. You can get games. You can get stats. Get all stats. Interesting. So what I might do actually is like get a list of stats and players and then match stats to players, for example. That could actually be interesting. And then maybe like a user could save that and build a team or something like the Dream Team or their fantasy league or whatever you can think of that you do with teams and such like that. So I'll kind of skip over this part, do a very quick overview of got the API, find a couple endpoints that seem like they relate to each other that could be interesting. Now let's actually think of the user flow for the app. Nothing fancy at all. We're not going to worry about authentication. We're not going to worry about like persisting information yet. We're just going to think, what is the purpose of this app? What is it supposed to do? Because the worst thing we can do is just jump in and start coding up some junk and have no clue what we're actually doing. So I'm going to make just a really rough sketch of what we want to do. So we're going to have like our, the main page. We're going to think of our major features, right? So major features of the app. I tend to think of features in a web app by page. Maybe you have a different idea. You could just write these down. Everybody's flow is different. What's really important is that you actually have a flow of what you want to accomplish and what a user should accomplish by coming into your app, or else you just have nothing. So let's think. So maybe they come on the page and we just display like a list of players, right? Maybe we just have like, player 1, and we have like some information about them under here or whatever, some info. Info, yeah, boom. And then we, have a bunch of that around all the screen, right? We have like a list of players and we could just write up here like list of players. Cool. If I can spell, pressure's on. Okay, we have a list of players. Excellent, sweet. Look at us cooking. So we'd have one player here, and and I'm trying to make copies of this player. Okay, maybe I won't do that. We have the idea. We have a list of players. Then maybe once you have the list of players, you have another screen that you can click into to show an information about a particular player and their stats. So maybe a user clicks, and they click on the thing, and then it goes to this page right here, and that happens to click, and they go to the big page, and this page has like a large picture of the player, like a banner image of player. Again, we're not going to like spend too much time really digging into like all the intricacies of this page. We're just going to try to get something down there. And lastly, we're going to put like some more information about him here. More information about the player. And lastly, we're going to, okay, now we got the information about the player. Now, maybe we want to have, this is where the fun part comes in. So now they've got the list of players, they've clicked on a player, and they see some more information about that player. Information including, stats, information, stats. And lastly, now maybe we think, what can they do that would be interesting here that might actually find useful? Maybe they like store that player in like their dream team roster or something like that. So we have another page here where now they can get, let's say they have like a player like that, and they take him and they put him in here, and they, put a few players in here, right? They can save their players. And we'll take that out, and we'll put, okay, you have player 1 info, and then you have, okay, and then here we'll call this like saved players, and you can have like their group stats or whatever here, like here's their group stats. Useful? I don't know. I'm not a sports dude, but potentially, I don't know. Also, it's just this could bring up all sorts of interesting ways to do this. So now we have a general idea of what this app does. It's a player app where you go and you get stats about a player and you build up a dream team, right? So now we have the major features. We have like basically 3 pages. Fairly simple app. We're always going to start simple because things like authentication, persisting, data, that also leads to all sorts of other interesting problems to find. Now here's the important part. We're going to pick some technologies that we're familiar with and some that we're not, because the point of this app is not necessarily to deploy it and like show the whole world and make a bunch of money off this kind of useless app. The whole point is to teach us something. What we want to learn is how to actually scaffold a good application and how to maybe learn some things along the way. So maybe on the front end, we're going to get our list of tech. Now I'm familiar with React, and I want to use React for the front end still, because maybe I want to learn more about Node and Express, for example. So we're going to use Next.js on the front end because I'm not that familiar with Next.js. Maybe we want to use, I've actually used Node and Express, so maybe I'll use something like Python for back end. And what does the back end do? Not really sure yet, but if we have saved players, we probably want to have the players saved somewhere that's not on the front end, and maybe we can have like an API endpoint for our back end that allows you to store players and associate them with a user ID. And that could be something kind of interesting to do there. For deployment, we're going to use AWS. Why AWS instead of Vercel or Heroku or whatever? AWS is what every single company out there uses, okay? And I'm sure that people say, well, I use Vercel or I use Heroku or whatever. Yeah, no real company uses that. And I guarantee you, when you work at most companies, they're going to use AWS in some form. Let's just stick with that. Let's put it on AWS, figure it out. Okay, plenty of people have done it. Tons of docs out there that are terrible, but that's okay. We're going to learn how to do it. We're going to force ourselves to learn how to do it. What else? Maybe we can have a testing strategy here. I've written lots of tests in Jest and React testing library, but I have not done many tests using Cypress.io, which is an end-to-end testing framework. So maybe we're going to write our test with Cypress.io. We're going to store our code on GitHub using Git. And what else do we need to think about for this? And I think we can pick things like some smaller features of this, like what kind of CSS library we're going to use. I like Tailwind. I've used it a few times. I've also heard of AntD, which I haven't used as much. Let's just choose AntD. So now I picked a couple things that I'm familiar with, like Next.js. So I've used Next.js before. I've used AWS before. I've used GitHub and Git, and I'm a little familiar with AntD. So really what that leaves me to really learn here is Python and AWS. So what I plan on really learning from this project might be Python AWS, and a little bit more about a CSS library that I've never used before, and Cypress.io. So I have a few learning initiatives within this app now. So now I have a very clear idea of what I set out to learn. I have a clear idea of what it is I'm going to build at a very high level. Now, once I get into this, a bunch of other problems will arise, and I'll have a much clearer idea of what the issues I'm facing are. And there's no training wheels on this, right? I can't just go watch a tutorial and just copy some dude as he's typing and think, oh, cool, now I have a shiny new app that I have no clue how it works. The fact of this, the point of this is actually not to make this app just work. It's to learn a bunch of stuff as we're doing it. Because the same problems that I'm going to find out in this app are going to come up in real life in my work. So I hope that was helpful if you're looking how to build an app. And if you want more help, I have some resources down below you can check out. Click on, and I hope that was helpful and it got you out of tutorial hell and hopefully into your own version of hell, which will then become heaven once you figure out how to actually make this app. See you around next time, and good luck.